So, why is this important for us as teachers today? Well, apparently we are talking about Bloom taxonomy, and this is one of the topics that Dr. Andy put it on the syllabus, so it is very important for us teachers to know. So why do you think this is important for you?
Other than just remembering and understanding, we can have the chance and knowledge to get them to be creative, creating and evaluating, analyzing. Just not only remembering and understanding, we can use the other parts of the text.
Right.
This is one of those things too. I make this comment personally as for my own use, as for everybody else, is that even though you've probably seen this before, or maybe in some cases you haven't yet, but I've seen it before, and a lot of you, like I know Zarni did it, did her BA in education and so on. People have seen it and are revisiting it in many cases. This is one of those things, though, that just by revisiting it, every time you look at it, it makes you think, oh. Because you know what we do tend to do is we tend to keep going back to the recall questions and keep going back to the comprehension, because that's sort of the easier thing to test. And we all do it. I do it as much as anybody. But just looking at this kind of forces you to think about pushing your questions up. It does not mean, just like David said earlier, go back to that, it doesn't mean those things aren't important. They are, but they're not the only thing out there. Clearly, we do want the kids to be expressing themselves and being creative, because that's what's going to help them not only be successful in life, but have a fulfilling life as well. So it's one of those things revisiting is really helpful to all of us, I think.
Yeah, that's exactly. I mean, I've seen it before, but it's difficult to apply when we are creating the test, and we have to be very careful. How many questions are just basically recalling the information? How many of them are just checking their comprehension? But I think teachers, we have to put effort to design the test according to the Bloom's taxonomy. Otherwise, like Dr. Annie said, it's so easy to create the test, which is like, what is the name of this? What is the name of this? What is the name of this? And what is the procedure for this? It's very easy. Any more suggestions? Yes?
But yeah, it's easy, but the other part is hard, really. How can I assess if I get my students create something? Because it depends. Maybe I find it good and give more points, or the other one not very good. But maybe if you check them, you will find the other one more creative. And it depends, you know. The other one is so easy. Just ask, and if the answer is correct, so yeah, less time. You spend less time. Like, I believe that if we can do all of them very good, but how? That's the point, I think.
As I can give a very simple idea, which is for creating, I think other people can also contribute the question. I think the best way is to have a rubric. When we are creating something, we cannot just, okay, well, this looks like, I really like it. It's very colorful and so creative, and I like the students, so I'm going to give an A. But the other students, like, I don't like the color that the student is using. I don't like it. It's not creative. So we cannot give the grade like that. There has to be a simple guideline, and simple guideline of the students, so they can follow the rubric, and according to the category, we can give the grades. We cannot just get, okay, this is creative.
No, I just was wondering, maybe I can help out a bit with your question. I find one of the easiest ways to do this. This works well for math, but I think you can probably use it in language arts and other subject areas too. Is if you got, like, sometimes you'll say, okay, what do you guys think is the answer to this question? You're doing a problem on the board in math, and typically 2 or 3 kids will shout out the answer. Now, often what happens when you get that is a couple of kids will shout out the wrong answer, or in some cases, if it's tricky, the reasoning is tricky, and there's a little bit of a switch in there. Maybe you got to change a negative sign to positive. You got to do something, and the kids don't catch it. Then you might even get the majority shout the wrong answer out, but one kid will shout the right answer out. what you do is you can say, you can jump right to evaluating by you can ask the kid that question, this question. You say to the kid with the right answer, and he probably hasn't even thought about this. He just knows that's the answer. But you say, that's right, Tony. Why do you say that? Why are you saying that's correct? And then the kid thinks about it. And he actually hadn't even thought about that. He just knew it was right, right? And then if Tony might not be able to say that, he might not be able to do it. He might be struggling. So then you go to someone else and you go, why do you think Tony's right? And you're going right into evaluation. And what you find is, often the kids can figure out what it is that is in that answer that makes it right, and why the other answers that everybody thought were right were actually wrong. But you haven't done it. But you've gotten him to evaluate, and you know what? He'll remember that much more than he will if you just tell him. That's an example of it. I mean, you can see those situations in math. You see it a lot. I think the same thing can happen in language arts and certain other subjects.
Just a thought actually while I was thinking about the curriculum, not about testing and such, but just thinking about the way I design my curriculum. I've got a lot of focus on the content. You know, the kids need to learn this. This is what the curriculum is, and I have to get them to teach them this content. And I think that is important. But I'm just sitting here thinking, well, there are other skills, critical thinking skills, and other skills that could be really valuable for them, particularly in their education. And I'm just wondering now, personally, if I'm actually doing that justice. And I'm thinking I need to think about that a little bit. And the contents can still be delivered and taught, but it's the way that's done, I think. And that's when maybe James comes in, that those high-level thinking skills can be brought in to teach the same content.
Well, for me, if somebody asks what is good teaching, it's a very broad question. But when I am reflecting on what is good teaching, I realize if we are doing only remembering and understanding, I would not call it is good teaching. Good teaching is really challenging the students to challenge what they think. For example, some students come into our class with the mindset of, I hate math. I hate math. So if we're just doing remembering, understanding, we're not challenging the students' thoughts. So we have to challenge the students and then to make them think. I mean, of course, we cannot force the students to love math, but we can challenge, we can make them analyze and evaluate and then shift their thought. Okay, math is not that bad. So I think when we are focusing on the higher thinking level, students have different thinking process. So we can focus on their thinking process rather than just let them remembering and understanding.
Yes, yeah. I'm just thinking because last semester we studied about this and we discussed about the cognitive domain, the affective and the psychomotor, right? I'm thinking for psychomotor, for physical education, for example, to give you a test, right? So we are doing some kinesthetics in there. And you will meet, I think, the creating and evaluating, something like that. So it's not only remembering and understanding, they also have the applying.
Thank you for bringing it up. Yes.
For me, to use these 6 levels of creative memory, all of them, in my classes lessons, to use them not that hard for me. Yes, if I think on it, I can use all of them. But in the exam, I find it a bit harder.
Right. I think we don't really have to put everything on the exam. We can have different type of assessment. For example, one of the ways is I have the unit exam, and I also count performance-based assessment, like doing projects, which is creating. So within that unit, it includes
Maybe
unit tests, combined.
You're right. Maybe
Okay, so
And you have to look at everything. Remember, go back to the holistic attitude we talked about earlier, right? And maybe it's not roughly how much we've done that here, but we've done it in other classes. But you have to look at this holistically. Zarni and David are not saying by this or anything else that you have to test all of these elements every time you test. In fact, that's probably impossible. That's probably impossible. Because some tests, you are just trying to see if they got basic factual recall, so you can go on to something else. So that test, that particular test is designed to be at the bottom level of taxonomy. Other times, you're actually testing whether they can create something, so you might be at the top. So there's pieces of it that go in with it. But I think the idea is it's a holistic process. It's over a unit, or over a year, or over a period that you look at all of these elements.
If you do an authentic assessment, that would be bringing in some of those. Yes.
Sure. And also remember, this is cognitive. This is a cognitive process. It doesn't really include, the affective domain, which we know is very important as well. Right? Critical, in fact. If you go back to the creative teaching procedures we had in here, and the film with Sir
Ken Robinson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sir Ken. Sorry, Ken was the organization, right? Sir Ken Robinson. And he was a criticism he said is like us university professors. He kind of singled us out for abuse. He said, like we're heads with a body or something like that. But keep in mind, this is all cognitive too, right? So there's more than this, right? All these things go together. It's a holistic process, and you have to bear that in mind. Anyway, I don't want to take too much time.
So here's a few of our suggestions. It's a very reliable procedure for assessing the students. Not just only the test, but we can include the performance-based assessment. And it is also a very useful structure personally for me when we are creating the test, and also is very useful in developing specific learning outcomes that the students can list the things that they learn, recalling information, applying, and evaluating. So for next slide, I'm going to